I think with Jolani, the bigger problem is his army than he himself, right? Because so Jolani, regardless of what he believes, what he is, whatever his agenda is, he needs to have a united Syria and united army to be able to make all of that work. But the problem is that it doesn't fit together. Right?
Sure.
His army is filled with ISIS members,
Right.
right? His army is filled with people that don't see eye to eye with him. I honestly, I well, it's not about. So with Jolani, I don't think it's about. A lot of people are like, oh, we don't trust him. We don't trust him. I don't think it's a matter of trust. Okay, it's a matter of figuring out what is in his best interest. It's not about trusting. I think it is in his best interest right now to play along with the Americans and the Western powers because Jolani doesn't seem to be he's after power, right? He's
Sure.
after power, and for power he needs stability, and for stability he needs to rebrand. Okay? But the problem is that how is he going to do that when the people who are supposed to be enforcing what he wants are people that don't see eye to eye with him and they do want to bring about an Islamic caliphate, right? So
Sure.
Jolani himself, it is within his own financial and power interest right now to have a unified Syria, regardless of what his ideology is. His financial interest and his power interest lies in that. You don't need to trust him, but you just need to see what would work, what is the best play for him based on what we see on the ground. But even so, for example, it is within his best interest if you don't kill the Druze. Like, I'm not saying he
Sure.
cares about the
Sure.
Druze, but it is actually in his best interest if they don't do that. But it
Right.
doesn't matter what is in his best interest if the people in his army want to kill Druze and they're not going to follow his command regardless of what he wants, right? So
And
that's
I
what I'm
feel like
saying. The
he's kind
problem,
of in a pickle
yeah,
because,
yeah,
you know, if they, number one, he clearly doesn't have control over them,
yeah,
but also he's towing a fine line in my understanding because what you don't want to do is piss off all those crazy jihadis that you've let run wild and been ruling over if they think that you're also selling out and now that you're going to cater to the west in some way, wearing a suit, taking off your turban, trimming your face pubes, and
right.
becoming more modern and less like the lunatics that are all in that group. And so I can see it's a very shaky leadership, right? Do you think that the fall of the IRGC changes anything for him?
Right. So the fall of IRGC is going to help him a bit because the Islamic Republic is very much against him, and they have been trying to support the different terrorist groups in Syria to basically cause more instability for whatever he's trying to do, right?
Yeah.
So Jolani is very, very, very anti-Islamic Republic, right? And the Islamic Republic is very, very, very anti-Jolani. And also, I've seen from so many Muslim content creators that they're very disappointed with him because they think that he's actually negotiating and talking to Israel. Many Muslims think that we're very happy initially with him, and now they think that he's a Zionist agent or whatever, right?
Do they really
Uh,
believe that he's having those talks, or do they use that as an excuse? Because honestly, when they have a problem with somebody, that's their go-to. You're a Jew, you're a Zionist, you're getting
no,
paid by the Mossad, and they just
no,
blanket blame that when they can't stand someone. Do they
no.
really believe that about him?
This time they really believe that about him because they loved him initially when he came
Okay.
to scene. Like they adored him. They're like, oh my god, look at him. Assad was like completely humiliated. This was something that they really loved to see. But honestly, like Israel basically came and did whatever they want in Syria, and he didn't do anything. And there were
Sure.
genuine reports regarding him actually meeting with Israeli officials that came out. So they're like, what the
Mhm.
hell? Israel comes and bombs your country, and you're now meeting with them and negotiating with
Yeah.
them. He has not put any signal out there that he would ever want to attack Israel. In fact, he has never done that, right? He's even signaled to Israel that we have no agenda in Israel at all. And they hate that about him. So I wouldn't be surprised if one day we get the news that Olani was assassinated by somebody in his army.
For
Right.
not being radical enough for them, right?
But I think the greatest threat to Jolani was the IRGC, the Quds army of the IRGC. Khamenei specifically gave the order to cause instability in Syria and attack his government and everything to destabilize it. So I
Yeah.
think that at least at least Jolani doesn't have to, if the IRGC falls apart, at least he doesn't have to worry about that. So that would be, I think he would love to see that.
Okay, yep. I've got a
Okay.
third. I'm going to save it and let some other people come through. So next we have Susanna, and then left-handed, you're after
Yay.
her. Thank you,
Oh, by
Armin.
the way, guys, remember I saw a couple of new faces here. So remember that, guys, we're recording this. So if you're now on a list and when you speak, just know that it's being recorded and it could be on YouTube. But after we record this, there's also a period when we stop recording, and then you could, if people who don't want to be recorded, they could speak then. Okay, Susie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, we're so glad you're here.
Aw. So I had a question, and I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but like I had texted you, so was it 2 weeks ago? I went to a demonstration locally, and it was really cute because at the end they called me on the microphone and they said, Susanna, is Susanna still here? Someone wants to meet you. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And then I go up and it's this girl, and apparently she watches Atheist Republic with her dad, both English and Persian. And apparently her dad has actually like been in communication with you, like wanted you to have you on a show that he does in Persian or something. And I was like, oh, this girl's cool, like I want her to be my friend. And I decided that she was going to be my friend. And then literally a couple days later, the following Tuesday, I see on her dad's Instagram that his brother was killed.
Oh,
And
no.
so I saw her last weekend and I was texting her and I was like, "Oh, can I honor your uncle's memory? But I want to respect your family's wishes during this time. Like, would it be okay if I bring a picture of your uncle with his name to the demonstration, honor him?" And they're like, "Oh, that's really nice. Thank you." So I saw them again at the demonstration last weekend and I met her mom, and like they told me some circumstances of what happened to their uncle that I'm not going to share right now just cuz I know that this is public. But anyways, I consider them part of like our Atheist Republic community, since they're viewers and watchers and part of our community. I've been thinking about what is a nice thing I can do for them. And I was wondering if maybe I get their permission, like we could share the story of her uncle on the show and what happened to him.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to them about this yet because I wanted to ask like you first because I know, you have to run a whole show and you're doing it with Goldie and a lot of stuff is happening. That that was just an idea I had.
Just send it to me, and I'll just let me know what you had in mind, and I'll just respond to you there.
Okay. She's a very private person, but I think I don't know, like they just need a lot of support right now. It was just so crazy to like see her 1 week later and she was like, I just never thought this would happen to my family. Yeah. But it's been really nice to see the whole local community come around them to support them. And they said some words at the last demonstration, and the whole crowd was yelling, Basharaf, Basharaf. And it was just like
Oh,
super sweet and emotional. But yeah, I was just trying to think about how to be nice.
thank you. Susie, guys, has been involved in so many of these demonstrations, but not just now. Even from Massa Mini, revolution when it started, she was always involved. In she's very close with the community. Okay, okay, so just message me and we'll see.
Thank you.
Shall, shall I close your microphone? There's an echo when you open your mic for some reason. Yeah.
That's because I'm driving, but I wanted just to thank Susie for what she said during your show about helping Iranians and going out and helping them out wherever we can and stuff.
Thank you. Okay.
Up next, we have left-handed, and then Shauna, be ready right after.
Left-handed. Left-handed.
So my question is about, I was listening to one of your episodes this morning, but I think it's from 2 days ago. And somebody was asking you about philosophy. And you were like, this is not the time for philosophy because, we kind of focus on winning first and stuff like that. And I agree with that. I think that especially when it comes down to like the morality of things, I think all of that's a distraction. But I was wondering, like, what if people who kind of have like these areas of specialty can be kind of doing work in the background until the time where philosophy is relevant? So, for example, what is the most important problem that philosophy will be able to address, say, a year from now? And what books do you think that will probably be the foundational understanding that the community could have as a resource? And then this person can interview certain people, read certain books based on what you think is best.
Yeah, I think when it comes to philosophy, the most useful areas of philosophy that is actually helpful in our lives is political philosophy and also political science, and also the history of the implementation of politics, all three at the same time, right? I think from other areas of philosophy, I think as long as we get to the point where people understand that utilitarianism is the most useful ethical system, as long as we get to that, then we could move on from the rest of philosophy. But I think just studying the modern republican tradition and basically making arguments for I mean, you don't even have to do it. I think moving from political philosophy to political science is very important for political philosophy to show how people have been thinking about this through history, but then immediately to move to political science so people could see that there's empirical data for the values, to show that the values that we are endorsing, we have empirical data to show which values actually make societies prosper. So basically, I think using political philosophy, political science, and history to show the classical liberal values are exactly the values that basically make societies prosper, and to advocate for that is the most useful way to go about doing that.
That makes sense. As a follow up, is it a distraction for me to read about Cyrus the Great? Because I know it's foundational in your culture, but is it relevant in terms of kind of understanding the context Iran's at now?
Well, I mean, to understand it, it will make it easier for bonding. Like, it's not necessary for us to understand it. I think more recent history will give you a better understanding of where we are at right now. However, understanding ancient history is helpful for creating bonds rather than improving the understanding of the current situation, right? So, studying the history from the past 100 years of Iran will give you a better understanding of what's happening right now, but understanding ancient history will impress an Iranian and will make it easier for you to bond with them. So that's the utility of that.
That makes sense. So for me, then, just to clarify, I care more about the bonding. So that's kind of where
Yeah.
I'll focus. And that's all
Yeah.
I've
Okay.
got. So thanks so much for answering.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Shauna.
Okay, very quick. Can America just take Qatar so we don't have to deal with it anymore? Number one. Number two, does Syria need to exist as a country? And number three, this is slightly will actually require some explanation. What is the deal with Turkey's relationship with Jolani?
Okay. So can we just take over Qatar? I mean, can America, should America? If it's a question of could, yes, obviously they could. They have more military power. So when are you asking can they or should they?
Well, okay, both. Yes, technically we physically could. I'm aware that we physically could. Rebecca of Rebecca Barsef thinks that we should just take it, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are because her opinion is that maybe having pirates trying to run countries was a failed plan, and maybe we should just take it and have this all be over. She's, she's a Georgian Jew.
So
She's gonna do that.
so when it comes to United States ability, you can't just measure military might. You also have to consider political capital. So, from a military perspective, United States might be able to do something, but it doesn't have the political capital to do it. United States is still a democracy, unlike what so many people from the progressive left might tell you. It's still a democracy, and if you don't, just because you could militarily do it, if it's not sellable in Washington D.C., then you technically can't do it. You cannot do it, right?
Yeah,
So
it's a
yeah,
lot
I don't
of
think.
oil. Big,
Yeah,
beautiful
yeah,
peninsula.
right. So technically, no, you can't. Like it's not in Washington D.C. You're not going to be able to sell that, right? Correct. So I don't think they can. Two, I don't think they want to. Okay, Qatar has become, for at least for the Trump administration and the Trump family, has been a very good source of income, right? So I don't think that they have any interest to go against Qatar. In fact, it seems like Qatar has so much influence in Washington D.C. that it's getting a lot of what it wants out of Washington D.C. So going completely against Qatar doesn't seem at all on the table
Okay,
in
so
any
you're
way.
saying that it's a 12-year project, not a tomorrow project. That's what you're telling
Well,
me.
well, another thing you need to take into account is that United States has created the new global order. The United States military is backing the global order that they created after World War II because it benefits the United States. They didn't do it as an act of charity, right? It wasn't because they were just really much into human rights, or basically like the global order that we created after World War II has created the stability and this framework for Americans to be able to create all the trade routes and the international order that benefits United States economy so much. So violating the very order that they have put in place undermines the order that they take that is benefiting America the most. I understand that they are now trying to move away from that because so many countries are basically leeching on the Americans' military might rather than contributing to it. So this is why, I mean, Trump seems to be slowly moving from a UN framework to this new framework that they have, which is like the world peace. You guys saw the logo is again, what is it called? The world peace thing that the Trump created? Seems like they're creating it as a competition to the UN. And guys, if you look at the logo of the Board of Peace, it is very similar to the United Nations logo. However, it focuses globe of the United Nations has all the countries, but the globe in the Board of Peace is zoomed into the US and it doesn't have the other hemisphere, right? Yeah, so that's very interesting. So it seems like, I mean, they're still going to need the same world order that they have created after World War II. There's still too much ingrained in the system to move to. You cannot abandon that, but it does seem that United States military might has become so much above and beyond other countries that it's making sense to keep considering new frameworks where America has a bigger role and it's dismissing other countries. But I think if they are dismissing other countries, Qatar would not be on the first on the list. Okay, I think like
Mm.
United States is more likely to dismiss European countries
Well,
before it
yeah.
dismisses Qatar.
Next question would be Syria. Does Syria in its current construction need to exist?
Well, see, here's the thing: no country need to exist.
No,
We
America
have
needs to
the
exist.
no, but the question is, can a country exist, and is it good that a country? Because the word need suggests that there's something within the fabric of the universe that makes something necessary, right? Syria is less viable as a country than most countries, right?
Yeah,
So
it
Syria, yeah.
seems like it could be divided into 2 or 3 states, and it would probably be
Yeah.
healthier.
Yes, Syria is like a Frankenstein monster. Like it's actually worse than a Frankenstein monster because at least that was a viable, like living thing that continued. Like it's Syria. It seems like something that shouldn't be a country, even if it is a country. Like
Yeah.
it cannot. It seemed like if somebody gave me a crystal ball and showed me that Syria is not a country anymore in 20 years, I would not be shocked. In fact, I would be shocked if it continues to be a country in the next 50 years. Right? So Syria dividing as into multiple things would not be a surprise.
Yeah, I think the question with Syria is how many countries does it balkanize into? I think is really the only question.
So the Alawite section, the Kurdish section, the Sunni section, the Druze section. So there's four, or I already counted
Yeah, the
four,
Christian
right?
yes, but you could also have the Christians would probably want to team up with the
There is no territory that is just like that Christians could have. Is there?
I don't think there's a specific territory that the
I f-
Christians could have, but I think that they would probably feel comfortable. I am guessing, this is a guess. I'm guessing they could team up probably with the Druze just
Unfortunately,
fine.
haven't they
Yeah.
historically teamed up with the Alawites sometimes?
And that was gonna be the other thing is potentially the Alawites, is probably the Druze or the Alawites. Probably the Christians would end up not having would be a little bit divided up between different
Yeah,
states.
I don't. I think they. I think I don't know if this is correct, but I think the Christians are like, a little bit
They're
more
like
mixed
yeah,
all
they're a
over the
little bit
place.
like everywhere, yeah, which is part of why they couldn't be a thing. And I don't know how good the Kurds and the Alawites get along. I don't know their relationship, but
I think Israel could come and take over some areas.
I would love to give Damascus to Israel, not
The
just
the
one.
the Golan Heights and the Druze area could be part of Israel.
It could be a separate city state or something like it could have some kind of arrangement where it has
I
some
don't
independence
know.
or something like that. But
Yeah.
anyway,
All right.
okay, so we agree Syria shouldn't exist as a country because it's a Frankenstein. And then what's the relation? This is more technical. Turkey's relationship with Jolani, where are they at?
Turkey was basically Jolani's army exists because of Turkish backing them. So
Okay.
that's how it all started, right? It all started
I
because
don't
Turkey
know.
was
I'm
backing.
asking.
Yeah, so basically, they were their own like group there, and they wouldn't be this successful. I mean, by the way, I think like Saudi Arabia stole them from Turkey, right? So Turkey basically created them, and then Saudi Arabia it was like, okay, this is our buddy now. This is our guy now. Even though Turkey wanted to have leverage in Syria, I don't even know if like the fall of Assad was Turkey's plan. I think they were. I don't know if somebody could correct me on this or not, but I think they were just building that army to have leverage over in Syria. They were supporting them just to have leverage, and all of a sudden, everything started collapsing one after the other. When I was like, "Oh my god, what the hell?" This group we created just actually took over all of Syria. Like I don't know if the Turks, guys. Jeffrey, do you think the Turks were surprised about how Jolani managed to all of a sudden take over the Syria? Because I think that they just created them as a point of leverage. What do you think, Jeffrey?
I think it's a good lesson in always keeping in the back of your mind, whatever you do, the law of unintended negative secondary consequences, right?
Okay,
Because
right.
you can't manage everything. You can it doesn't mean you shouldn't be so hesitant that you engage in something called paralysis due to analysis, right? Well, I can't tie down every variable, so I can't. You never make a choice. I'm just saying, in do it, you make your best informed assessment, you make your best shot, understanding that you should also have a contingency plan for things you don't see, whether they're or if something happens that you didn't want to have happen, although you're planning for it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, those were all my questions. So you're saying that for America to take Qatar, it's going to be a much more long-term strategic planning. That's what I'm hearing from you. And then
I
Syria shouldn't
I don't
exist.
think it's gonna happen.
I'm with Rebecca. Why do pirates need to be in charge of a country? I'm just saying.
Okay. I mean, I hope your dreams. I mean, I would like your dreams to come true. It's my dreams as well, but I don't think it's viable. It's gonna happen. But yeah, one can dream.
Armin, Cat Lady also had
Thanks for
something to
playing.
add to this. If I can insert her here, and then Danny, you're next. Danny?
All right. So I wanted to quickly respond to BT's question about the role of Qatar as terrorist whisperers if we defeat the terrorists of Hamas and the Islamic Republic. I don't think that this is a genuine role that they play in the world that makes them relevant. I'm not well versed on the exact reasons why the US sees Qatar as an ally. Maybe it's just that Qatar contains the US bases, but I don't see that they play any positive role in American interests in terms of negotiating with terrorists or mediating or anything like that. So I don't think a change of the exact list of current active terrorist groups will have any effect for them. I was hate watching Jon Stewart today, and I saw his interview with Jason Rezaian, who spent 544 days in an Islamic Republic prison. So naturally, seeing as I found him on left-wing media, I assumed that he would be anti-Shah, and indeed, he completely minimized the role of the Shah in the revolution, despite admitting that people on the street were calling for the Shah after the host brought it up. I also saw in different interviews that he's anti-Israel, and one time
We
when
hate
asked
him.
about, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
When,
A lot of Iranians, even before all of this, hated him. They consider him to be part of the problem. But yeah, go on.
yeah, the other thing I saw about him was that when asked about why the Islamic Republic hates America so much, he said it was because, and I'm using his words, it was because of the 1953 coup by the CIA, which in actuality was not a coup. The Shah used his constitutional powers to dismiss a prime minister that was trying to give himself total dictatorial powers. So Iran went from being a constitutional monarchy to being a constitutional monarchy in an event that was the exact opposite of a coup. So about this, I have the following questions. First, is it safe to conclude that he's a reformist based on just the evidence I outlined, and based on the fact that he got released from prison at all? Second, a reformist listed on Mosdaryab, and third, is Mosdaryab down right now because I can't open it?
Yeah. So yes to the first one, and to the third one, yes, Dub is being attacked, and that's why it's not being coming. It's not showing up. And what was your second question?
Do you generally list reformists or only people who are actively like in the regime?
Anybody who is basically not asking for the fall of the Islamic Republic and is asking for negotiations and thinks there's a way to basically do a policy of appeasement with the Islamic Republic, we consider them to be reformers, and we consider them to be the enemy because they are basically the most dangerous people, because better than the regime, they're finding ways for the regime to survive. So these people have blood on their hand, in our opinion. And this person has a history among Iranians, and they consider him to be on the wrong side. And and here's the thing: the way that the Islamic Republic creates people that are useful for it, sometimes it doesn't even need to turn them into mercenaries, right? Just by understanding. So there is like sometimes an understanding without an actual communication. So for example, let's say that I am somebody who thinks that United States shouldn't be attacking the Islamic Republic. Okay, I have been acting like the opposition to the Islamic Republic. I have some problems with the Islamic Republic, but everywhere I get invited, I say like, "Oh, I'm against the sanctions. I'm against military intervention. I'm against Pahlavi. I'm against Israel." So the Islamic Republic, oh, like this is the type of a position that we like, right? So let's boost his resume. Let's arrest him. Let's make sure we don't mistreat him. Let's try to provide ways that he could, like, you don't even need to talk to him. You just understand, like, this guy's having the correct positions. The Islamic Republic is not really mistreating me. They're allowing me, like, they are also sometimes helping me they're opening doors for me. So there is like an understanding between you without necessarily you talk like them coming like, hey, here's some money, go do this for us. Do you know what I mean? You just notice what's happening. You both understand what's happening. I think Jeffrey wanted to add something to that, right? Jeffrey, go ahead.
One of the operational impacts of global socioeconomic and technological trends regarding the advanced transportation technology, telecommunications technology, is it allows adversaries, or any actor for that matter, to do horizon scanning, right, and see what other actors that they find themselves co-aligned with. And so, from an organizational and structural perspective, your opposition is no longer defined. This goes from, like, extra state security concerns, so ruler regime versus non-state actor like this douchebag, or say even just terrorist organizations in general. Traditionally, those structures were very hub and spoke and or spider web in nature, meaning they have a defined core. You have all these subsidiary nodes with defined organization operation ties between them. Well, now what you have is essentially competing clouds, right? So while those traditional structures exist, hub and spoke, spider web, like Armin said, some guy comes up and goes, here's a big bag of money with the cartoon dollar sign on it, do blah, 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 right? You can actually, and if you want an example of that regarding the Chinese Communist Party, go to the FBI's website and look up Game of Pawns. That's based on a real story. It's also now that diaspora is far more complex and diffuse. So when an actor engages in activity, that's now spread throughout the world, right? The speed of light via, what is it, like the internet and cable news and the rest of it. And so they just, when that signal of that act hits a receptive node, that node then self incentivizes and does whatever it wants to do. And that's exactly what Mullah regimes will do. I mean, if you want a more short and sweet kind of definition of it, it would be the 21st century modernized version of what Quincy Wright, who was a geopolitical theorist in the right after the Second World War, said that external meddlers can always be counted on to support internal political dissidents that external meddlers deem undesirable. In this case, say the Mullah regime trying to find anybody who is in opposition to U.S. intervention to kill those ruthless bastards.
I also wanted to suggest the idea, if you want to respond to the current point of maybe we can have another signal for that, like double raising hands, as opposed to making faces. I don't know if that could get out of hand.
Or you could write in the chat. Double raising hands is also, I understand. Yeah, that's a good idea to make sure. If you want to respond, you could do a double raise hand.
I would maybe advise against that from a mod standpoint because there are a lot of other reactions that also happen. If people could just type in the chat that they want
Type in
to
the chat.
yeah, if
Okay.
and then we'll kind of see how that goes because I can see that also getting out of hand, allowing multiple people to chime in all the time. We might not keep our time, but we'll see.
Mm.
Okay, Danny, were you finished with your points?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. So next we have Francesco.
It's about the discussion we had about al-Julani. And yeah, words are cheap. I think that's true. And actions speak louder than words in general. So he never condemned the attack on Druze publicly. And he could have easily done so, but he say, okay, maybe the Druze, but he didn't do the same for the Alawites, the Kurds. So yeah, he doesn't seem like to be against it. And yeah, also he never spoke against, I don't know, the freezing, like the ISIS members now that got let out of prison, about 15,000 of them. And yeah, there are a lot of people that are, out of hand under his control. I mean, 2 American soldiers got killed with an interpreter, right? And yeah, I think there is a clear pattern with him, and everybody sees it. It's kind of obvious. So that's what I wanted to say. Plus, what is his legitimacy? Because who voted for him? Who does he represent? So is he legitimate ruler of Syria?
I think that's irrelevant when it comes to legitimacy. Right now, we're talking about who has the power. Like, legitimacy comes from if he's able to hold power, then he is. If he's not able to hold power, then he's not. Legitimacy. Syria is in a failed state situation. Legitimacy comes from whoever has the highest power. It doesn't come from democracy or elections right now. Let me make my point. Whether he represents people or not only matters if it translates into political power or not. So it does matter that he doesn't represent people, but only to the extent that it affects his power over ruling over Syria. And I think that he has a lot more challenges against him being able to control Syria than whether or not he represents people or not. The fact that his own army is against him, against some of the positions that he's taking, is a bigger threat to his ability to rule than whether or not he has like democratic legitimacy or not.
So for you, say it's irrelevant if somebody is the representation of the people or not. The important is that
No,
they need to
I'm
be
not saying
able
it's
to hold
irrelevant.
power.
I think no, I'm not saying it's irrelevant. I'm saying he has bigger problems than that right now, much bigger problems than that. Like I'm saying that his control over Syria is very, very fragile for many, many reasons, but mostly because he doesn't represent his own army. Forget about Syria as a whole. He doesn't even represent the views of the people that are supposed to be fighting for him. That's a more immediate problem.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I am back up again with my final question.
Who's next? Oh,
Can you hear me?
there's a list above.
I can hear you.
My final question was Trump, although he has given many reasons, as he calls many people who come from the southern border, a plethora of non law abiding names. When I look at the more information I've gotten in regard to the IRGC and terrorist proxies operating in South America, how much of that has contributed to his border tightening? Or
Oh.
was it kind of just a happy coincidence that he did that and then Maduro and now the IRGC? Am I making a connection where there might not be one and giving him a little too much credit? What do you think?
So you're saying how much of Trump's border policy has to do with IRGC's influence in Latin America? Is that the question?
Yes, because although he has plenty of reason that he has expressed plenty of reason to have controlled the border, we know that drugs and drug trafficking through terrorist organizations is big. That in of itself would be a good enough reason. But we also know that people have come in through the southern border a number of months ago that we found out were working for Iran to do different things. And so
For
they were
Islamic Republic.
slipping right in. I'm sorry. Yes, yes, thank you. I appreciate that. And so, how much of that contributes and what do you think?
Okay, so I think okay, so his border policy I think had more to do with how popular that was to get elected. I think it was more related to that. That was something that was very, very, very much in demand by Americans. So I think that had more to do with that than the IRGC's involvement in Latin America. However, I do think that his whole Don Roe doctrine plan to have more control over the Western Hemisphere has something to do with foreign influence in the Western Hemisphere, but not just IRGC. It's a combination of IRGC, Russia, and China, right? So, and I think the Islamic Republic is part of that. South America has become a major hub for all of the enemies of United States to come and camp around there and make that place base of their operations. So the Islamic Republic was doing in Latin America the same thing that China and Russia are doing, and basically Trump is like, yeah, we have to put an end to all of that, not just IRGC, right? And I think that Trump's positioning against the IRGC has more to do with cornering, like isolating China. I think it's less to do with the Islamic Republic itself and more in preparation for what's about to come between United States and China and making sure that the Islamic Republic and all of its areas of influence are either on the right side or at least not a place for China to be able to put pressure on United States.
Even enough time for something like that. I guess at least to get the ball started rolling, but also considering that we're very bipartisan in this country and a good portion of what everybody wants to get done is undoing what someone else did. So, is it realistic that he's going to get very far in the next 3 years with anything with China? Also, Jeffrey did raise his hand, so he probably has something to chime in on this.
I think a lot of these new policies, a lot of them are less partisan than some people think. We'll have to see because I think weirdly there were some policies by the first term of Trump that continued, for example, by Biden, because I think some of these are above Trump and Biden. Like not like there's a deep state that the decisions are being made. They're just so apparent as the correct position to make that there's basically at some point even I mean, for example, Trump came into office being an isolationist, and now look at him now, right? So I think there's certain things that are supposed to be so that makes so much sense for America that eventually the right forces and the right lobbies and the right sources of influence would basically make it so that even though you know it's not going to be exactly how it should be, but it puts you one way or another in the right path. Also, with regards to the 3 year remaining, just remember what Trump has done in the 1 year, right? So in the past 1 year, we have had more changes by a U.S. president that, like, I think it would take 10 Biden administrations to be able to do all of
That's a
these things that he
very
just
good
did
point.
in the past 1 year. Another thing to keep in mind is that I think some people within the Trump administration are thinking the same thing that you're thinking. The Board of Peace, or is that the name? I think they're trying to create like an institution that is beyond, that Trump could continue some of the things that he's doing beyond this. I don't think that's going to work because it doesn't have as much of whatever. It's not going to be as influential as the office of the president. But I think they are trying to find ways for Trump to continue to do some things on a global level even after his presidency is over. So that's the reason why they created the Board of Peace, and they're making Trump the leader of it forever, apparently, for as long as he's alive. So that might be because, that might be in reaction to that. But yeah, but Jeffrey, what do you think?
So I posted it in the discussion, the report I wrote and sent up the chain that in part underwrote the calculus surrounding U.S. policy regarding Venezuela. And it outlines in no uncertain detail the organizational operational ties between the violent Marxist Maduro regime as it existed, Putin's criminalized counterintelligence state, Chinese Communist Party, the Mullah regime, and specifically Hezbollah. And Hezbollah has been expanding its influence throughout Central and South America for the better part of 20 years. And it got to a point now where, given where everything else is going on in the world, I just posted another report that'll help give people a framework to think about things, at least hopefully. We can no longer afford to just let that slide. So that's why Donald acted out. As far as the resistance that's coming, like the maintaining national will or the impact that increasing polarity is having on maintaining national will. That's one of the reasons why I rail against all the internal political dissidents and seditionists, both on this show, in the reports that I write and or share, regardless of which side of the aisle that, whether they're radical leftist and woke mamalukes or crazy people like Tucker Carlson or Ron Paul or Paleo Cons. It doesn't matter who it is. There are certain policies that, given the state, that given the increasing contentious nature that defines the contemporary geopolitical and geostrategic environment we're in, the United States has to adopt very specific and decisive policies to either offset escalation, which is probably going to happen no matter what now, and barring that, minimize the damage and prepare us to the best that we can regarding what's coming. Part and parcel of that is removing the Maduro regime, and as a follow up to that, which is in that report if you read it, is taking down the Mullah regime and supporting brave Iranian protesters, because they're one of the Mullah regime is one of the pieces that's got to be taken off the board.
So do you think this is so essential that it goes above the presidency of Trump? Like, it's so important for United States that it does, like, to some, like, even if Trump was not president, this is the policy that maybe later, maybe not this fast, at some point would have been adopted by other presidents as well, even if Trump was not the president. No.
No, I just
Mm.
point to what happened. Armin, think about what happened. Obama threw those brave kids under the bus and was involved in creating the JCPOA Iran deal that were then the Obama retreads were part of Biden's administration that very much screwed up Biden's foreign policy, right?
I understand that. I think the Democrats are just. I think the Democrats would just make it so much later and would have made it so much costly. But I think that this is, you don't think that they would ever wisen
So
up
you're
to it. No.
you're basing your assessment on a traditional framework of the Democrat Party that existed, say, during the time of
Could,
JFK.
No,
could I
no, no.
respond on?
I'm not even think. I'm not judging the Democrats. But we go to Oscar as well. I'm more thinking in line of political determinism. You know what I mean? More than based on g- political, based on economic and military objective realities, that certain things are you don't believe in that theory that certain things are, inevitable. Jeffrey, can you answer that? Yeah, and then we go to
Yes,
Oscar.
Guy, you mentioned this in the last show that it's true that monadic regime type and economic interdependence does raise the barometer for interstate security concern to translate in interstate warfare. That also applies to collaboration. It doesn't do so decisively. I'm saying, independent of that, at least from my experience of the people and the players that are involved, some of which are the main players, they don't give a shit. Like, people who are
Yeah.
part of Obama's administration don't
No,
give a
I
shit.
understand. No, I'm not disputing that. I completely agree with
Mm.
that. But I'm just saying that maybe like there's this understanding that the material realities on the ground will make certain outcomes one way or another. So maybe if the Democrats would never do this, it would force for a Republican to be elected because this has to happen. But do you believe so you don't believe in that sort of determinism of outcome when it
No,
comes?
these people, because they look at the ground, what's the reality on the
No,
ground, it illustrates that their survival is directly dependent upon us doing these policies.
no, I
That
don't. I'm not
I don't
saying that they would
understand.
wisen up. I'm just saying whoever doesn't wisen up will be removed one way or another.
It's the fight that BT was mentioning. That fight is real, which is why I post some of the things in the discussion board to pre-bunk a lot of lines of derision. That's why I do that.
Okay, Oscar, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, well, I wanted to talk a little bit about Trump, which is why some people like him and people like me don't, which is that he's a person that people say gets things done, right? But he's a person that, because he gets things done, at the same time, he doesn't like mediators, right? He doesn't like people to mediate when he makes a decision, and he likes things to happen when he says it happens. And so he introduces a very big wild card into the world, right? Whether for good or for bad. And he also introduces a level of the use of speech based on his position that is completely irresponsible, right? It's something that you would see out of a cartoon, basically, an evil cartoon. And he's using this position, right, to make things, right? For example, training people in ICE, arming them, and then sending them out to the city to go and come in contact with civilians, right? What are you going to do once you end your presidency and you have to disarm them? What is that going to do, right? You've introduced a lot of changes, like you say, many changes you've introduced, I fear might not be able to be undone. And you have to really, it's we talk about Trump and Trump and Trump. It's like, it's so personalistic that we're talking about the guy basically because we can't talk about almost anybody else. It really matters, like, on what foot he kind of like wakes up on, and if he thinks that you have been paying the rent, whether you've been paying back what you owe him, and if you don't, he's gonna bully you until you do, right? And I am afraid, and this is just kind of like the other side of maybe the argument, right? I see people already kind of raising their hand and stuff. Maybe this is the other side of the argument, but I'm afraid, right, that once he's out, what kind of America are we going to be left with after his presidency, and what kind of standing will America be, in relation to allies or in relation to other actors in the world, like Denmark, for example, who actually helped us in Iraq and in Afghanistan. So I'm just like, I just kind of wanted to present maybe another side because I actually see him as very problematic.
Oscar.
But
Okay.
Also,
Hold on. No, hold on, Michael. There, mute your mic. You raise your hand if you want to respond to that. Okay. So I saw a bunch of people, BT. I saw a lot of people raise their hand. I wonder if they want to respond. Let me know. So I saw Jeffrey seems to want to respond to this. Adam, did you raise your hand to be added to the list or to respond to Oscar? Respond. Amy, you raise your hand to be added to the list or respond to Oscar?
Gone to Oscar.
Michael
oh,
wants to respond
let
to
me
Oscar. All right. So let's just go. So BT, Jeffrey, Adam, Amy, and Michael, they want to respond to Oscar. Guys, keep it short then.
So it's true that President Trump has a certain hard way of speaking. The simple fact is sometimes that's what needs to be said. I mean, I've worked in those areas and seen how people treat when people talk nice. The time where the United States is going to allow our allies to free ride under our security umbrella, that's done. Not only is it immoral and it's in direct violation of the agreements they signed on to, we can no longer cover all bets because we now live in an asymmetric multipolar world. And while it's true that you're worried about unintended negative secondary consequences, say Donald unleashing a force that he can't control, we have to weigh relative risk. And right now, the previous administration let in tens of thousands of terrorists and known assets for our adversaries' intelligence agencies. All of them have been activated. And if we do not sit there and do our domestic shaping operations prior to the onset of escalatory war, we're going to have a whole shitload of mass casualty events. The reason the amount of threats the previous administration let in, and we don't have enough people on the wall, we literally are hiring back people that retired and they're getting up in the field. So I'm not saying I don't hear your issue. I'm saying you have to weigh relative risk, and the risk is far greater in not doing.
Okay. Adam?
Hi,
Oh,
guys.
hi.
Nice to meet you all. I've been watching the Revolution live all month. I wanted to jump on this thing about Trump's language, which I guess we've all lived through and have an opinion about. And I wanted to mention one time I saw Trump actually explain himself really quickly, and I thought, oh, he rarely does that. And he explained just in line of one breath that the core to what he's doing is trying to be unpredictable. And I thought that's absolutely right, especially because, you know, we live in a mad world, mutually assured destruction with the nukes, and he's got his finger on the button, and he wants people to think he's crazier than he is. And honestly, I've started doing this myself as a politician. People in Toronto think I'm pretty freaking crazy, but they don't know what I'm going to do.
Oh, so
And
he's a genius. I just don't get him.
yeah, well, and
Okay,
actually, there's a
guys,
ref.
Oscar, not a single person interrupted you when you were speaking. Not a
Sorry,
single
sorry,
person.
It's
sorry,
okay.
sorry.
I teach coding to kids. I can handle it. And I just wanted to mention a reference that I found really helpful for understanding this because I thought of it when Trump said that a couple of years ago. And it's a chapter in Steven Pinker's book, How the Mind Works. I forget which chapter it is, but he talks about the movie Doctor Strangelove. And some of you have probably seen it. And he uses Doctor Strangelove to explain why humans would evolve to have emotions that they can't control, and it's basically to follow through on threats, which is very relevant to what's happening right now, right? Because Trump's making threats and he has to follow through. And the idea is that if you think Trump, let's say it's Trump who's president, and you think he's sane, then you might think, well, if we launch a nuke at him, he's not going to send a nuke back because that's just going to kill more people. By the time you send a nuke at them, they're already dead. Then they won't nuke back. Therefore, you can nuke them. So Trump has to seem so crazy that he doesn't value human life, that he cares more about following through on threats because of nuclear mutually assured destruction. So I'm sure that's relevant to the current situation. Anyway, it's a really good explanation in Pinker's book. I recommend it. But he's trying to be unpredictable. So he's doing a good job at that.
Okay, Amy.
Okay, thank you. I, as someone who moved from the left to the right recently, and someone who saw Trump from both sides, I appreciate now, especially now that I watch him from a different perspective and watch things differently than I used to watch, like literally. I appreciate the efficiency of the language that he uses. I like the fact that he's not wordy, flowery. I also appreciate the fact that he's a troll. He likes to stir the pot. I get that. I think that, you see that in the world in general, and he's really good at it. I agreed a lot with what Jeffrey was saying, but I had a question for Jeffrey because it's along the same lines of what Oscar was talking about. The ICE agents who are in the field, I had a theory that he had said something about Oscar had mentioned that he was just bringing people in and training them and putting them in ICE. My theory was that there were a lot more people that he was putting in ICE that probably had military training. What's your thought, Jeffrey?
So it's true that they've expanded or like
Short.
they've okay, sorry.
No, short. Make it
So yeah,
short
it's true
because,
they
like, we.
expanded.
Okay.
So because we don't have enough people on the wall to meet all the domestic security concerns that we're facing, not in least of which was exacerbated by the previous administration's lax border
Correct.
policy, we
Correct.
need to sit there, and we've expanded our ranks. And that means, yeah, you might take a little bit lesser trained people, or you might find other people who are retired or have skill sets that have a max amount of crossover, like veterans. That's why we're doing it. It's not an act of totalitarianism, it's an act of desperation created by our previous administration.
Okay, we need to move on to Michael because we need to go back to the list. And also, Oscar, BT says it's only fair for Oscar to be able to respond to all of this. And guys, after Oscar responds to this, let's go back to the list. But Michael first, and then Oscar.
Yeah. So long story short, I feel like I agree with Oscar's points, and I feel like that what we need to fix in the United States is our law enforcement issue and also restructure our immigration process. Because number one, like it's very inefficient. Number two, like for example, the police in many situations, and this happened in Uvalde school shooting, you had law enforcement that was just waiting outside the school and they didn't engage. And unfortunately, you had border patrol agents that, should be in charge more of the border issue rather than like being the police. So I feel like we first have to fix these gaps in order to prevent siding on one extreme. And I agree with Oscar with the fact that like like with Denmark and many European countries, they have been very supportive of the United States when it comes to like wars in the Middle East. That's all.
Okay, Oscar.
And I get that there are like security concerns around the world and these kinds of things, but you're talking about your own civilian population that you're sending these people to, right? And so when you invoke, and especially him, where he uses this insurrection language and these kinds of things, it reminds me of the time of the Spanish Civil War, where a part of the population was basically trained to go after a part of the population that was often identified as enemies of the state or political enemies. And I often hear this lumping as well of the liberals with the communists and the socialists by the rightists, very often done by more the right wing. I wouldn't even call them like American conservatives. This is more like a right wing kind of thing of like Christian nationalist kind of like idea. But this level of urgency that you're communicating, Jeffrey, I am worried that because of this level of urgency, that you might really bring in a tank to the city next time, or you might bring a machine gun or whatever, and more people will get shot for this kinds of reasons because of the level of urgency, right? Because we have so many enemies inside. Let's arm our civilians. And another question that I have is, what are you going to do once the enemy is eradicated? Are you going to still maintain those armed civilians? They're going to want to do something with those skills, right? So I just kind of wanted to highlight those worries that I see within America.
Okay, let's just move now to the next person because there's a lot of people on the list. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so next on the list we have Gila. As a reminder, guys, it is about 40 minutes, a little less until the hour, and we're getting Armin out. We also have 2 questions for after the recording stops. So I have stopped taking new names on the list. If we happen to jam through these and it looks like we'll have more time, I'll open it up to just the first hand once I say go. Keep your hands away or we cut them off here on out.
Thank you. And the main point I wanted to tell you is about putting, like after you air hard stuff, and I want you to air hard stuff, we air here, even at noon, we show these pictures, you can show it too. But then after that, you put the pictures and videos of the children of the regime having fun. The hypocrisy, the switch. I think it will be a good way to show it. That's one
So
thing.
you're saying it's a good video to show the during
After the
the
body, after the, yes.
to show the
Then how
bodies
to
of the
show the
Iranians
food.
being killed by the Islamic Republic, and then switch to showing the children of the regime officials having fun and partying and having luxurious lives outside of Iran. Yeah.
Yes, even now when I say it,
Yeah.
it makes my heart pound even faster.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
the dissonance is major impact.
That's a
Okay.
good. Yeah.
And now we
That's
come back to our discussion. I need
Okay,
to
thank you.
slow my heart. I
Oh,
wanted to share with you everything that I see. What are you talking about? From my perspective. When I was a little girl, I used to go on a bus and I used to scan the bus to look for bombs, okay, for terror. Now I don't do it. This is old news, right? Now there is new terror everywhere. It's a different kind of terror. It has many tactics. He's using us and our ways to disguise himself, and he's infiltrating. You know, when you discuss about borders, now it's inside your borders in many ways. The Somali Minnesota frauds, it could be the Intifada people on the streets. We have to think about all of it. And Shana, in the beginning, you said about Qatar and America. You need to be scared that Qatar is buying people inside your government, inside your culture, and they're doing it. And that's not, they don't buy the government with business, legitimate business. They buy people, right? That had influence in many directions. So it's a big thing. And I think this is why Trump is so good, because he understands everything is fast, right? Not sleepy. And when you talk to this kind of terror that is fast and moving and switching faces, you need to be fast and you need to not work with diplomacy anymore. Because diplomacy doesn't work in these cases. You need to squeeze his hands so hard that for a week he will think about this conversation. Okay? You need to force him. We don't have time for diplomacy and sleepy and more committees and stuff. So that's another thing. And the board, the piece of board, the board of peace. Peace, it's not the word, okay? They're saying board of peace, but it's actually the board of stability, okay? People are so scared of this fragile situation. So Trump is the only one that made people with deals, whatever he want. He made them stood to some promise, even if it's not all the promises. People trust Trump that even people are so scared of him that they will listen, and we need this because if the board of stability and peace will not last, this whole thing is going to collapse. But if it will last, even for a short time, this region can like build itself over. So yeah, that's
Okay, so Armin, Nail Bunny asked that you check your Telegram when you can. And next on the list, we have Richard.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, we hear you.
Okay. So, not a question, not a point. Just wanted to say something to Armin. It occurred to me that you've been kind of running an emotional marathon the last 30 days and just wanted to send words of support. I think I told you earlier I don't speak Persian, but I did find something in Persian that I thought might be applicable to all this. I wanted to say that to you if that's okay.
yeah, no, of course.
All right. I apologize for mispronouncing any of this. Namdi Basi Omid asked Payani Shabi Siya Septid asked. Payani Shabi Siya Septid asked.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. That's very sweet.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
that.
everything. That's all
Thank
I
you.
wanted to say.
No, thank you for your support, Richard.
Richard, you are such a mensch. Okay, next we have Shai.
Surprise. Oh, my camera is bad, so I'll turn it off. Hila, I had the same experience when I was a kid here in Israel, getting on the bus, scanning the bus, seeing somebody that I don't like, getting off the bus, waiting for another bus, etc. That was, yeah, I remember the 90s. I wanted to make a few points, guys, here about political philosophy that was discussed earlier. Armin, thank you for that course. I watched 20 or 30 minutes of it in school here about political philosophy. I'm going to watch it to the end and then I'll be able to much better chime into this. I've been talking about Trump and political philosophy. I'm still putting together what's realistic and what's theory and what's real because it seems like Trump is in the real world. So when he started running, there was an article that came out by the Dilbert cartoonist who just passed away, Scott Adams, called Clown Genius. So everybody read that, because I think Oscar said, "Oh, you're saying Trump's a genius," and he wouldn't have won the presidency if he wasn't using all kinds of crazy tactics during the debates and in order to rally everybody to listen to him and gain attention. And I think today he is using these tactics too, to basically figure out ways to make things happen. And I believe, in my opinion, he's trying to get rid of the Ayatollahs. It's just not an easy thing to do. He's trying to figure out a way to make that regime fall. And so I hope that's the case, because he is so unpredictable and it's hard sometimes to read him. But from what I see, yes, he is trying to do that strategically. The other point, there's another group here in Israel and around the world called the Ayn Rand Center, and they're more on the political philosophy side. And they seem to be not really happy with Trump, but at the same time, there could be a debate made between your political theories that I see in the course and their views, and that's sort of like a discussion on the new emerging right, I would say, around the world. But it will be amazing to see if, and like I hope when the Islamic Republic falls, we will have a new world where Iran is free, and that creates an entire new dynamic around the world where the quote unquote, not the right, but I would say the non liberal free world is going to have its energy released. I'm looking forward to that. Everybody here is looking forward to that. I want to say
Yep.
one last thing in that relation. In the past 5 years, I've had the opportunity to work with amazing colleagues who are from Iran. In one instance, I was hired by somebody who was an Iranian Canadian to work for them. In another instance, I had somebody work as a developer under me in a team who's
I
from Iran. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. And the just like the people in Iran seem to be, once they're free, it's going to be amazing. I think I've already made that point.
thank you, thank you. All right, well, guys, let's go through the list a little bit faster if we can.
We've got Michael,
I'll
Cat
just go.
Lady, Oscar, Uncle, and Hassan. A gentle reminder that we are coming to a close now, and so we really got to keep with those 3 minutes where we can. Thanks, everybody.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, obviously, like, I think the maybe we're not as smart as Trump is, but I feel like Trump uses a lot of like language, like for example with Greenland, annexing Greenland. Maybe he's using that just for the media, just to distract the American public while he does maybe a major operation in Iran. I mean, I could be wrong or I could be right. That's my theory. But at the same time, I feel like this guy has to moderate himself. And then also, like, because here's my thing: when you make a promise to a certain group of people, that means that you plan on executing something big. And I really feel bad for the Iranian people because, like, the people in Iran, because they might think that Trump is betraying them or whatever, you know, and they have all the right to think that way. But, like, obviously, if I were in their shoes, I'd feel hopeless at this point. Oh, yeah. And then another thing, yeah, like, for example, I agreed with Oscar's talking points. Like, what's going to happen after Trump? Because here in the United States, like I'm here in California, and there's Governor Gavin Newsom. He's like a damn liberal. He's an extremist. So we have many of these dudes that are running for presidency in the next presidential election. As a matter of fact, we have the midterms coming up. And so, I'm definitely going to vote Republican because, I'm not Republican. I don't identify myself as Republican nor Democrat. I'm more of like independent. But at the same time, I don't want these people to get in office that are like liberal because Gavin Newsom has really restricted the gun rights here in the state of California. And if he gets in office, he'll just probably try and disarm the country. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you,
Can
Arm.
I don't think like moral judgments on these people is, I think, is irrelevant. I've become
Mm.
so much of a consequentialist that if an asshole person is doing something that ends up being for some reason or another in our interest, I'll take it. And if a really good decent person is doing certain things that is against our interests, we have to take a position against that very good person. I don't give a shit anymore regarding, oh, this politician is good or bad. We have to focus on what we can do given the information that we have. Like, we have to look at our agency and where we could push for what we want, and based on the information that we have, and based on what we could do as a collective, regardless of whether we like the person or we don't, right? It doesn't really matter, in my opinion.
I mean, I
Whether
don't
you
hate him.
like the guy or don't. I think it's irrelevant. Who gives a shit, right? Like, we know that there's a like, and I think like we don't need to come up with a blanket like judgment on Trump or anyone else. Like I
Mhm.
think it needs to be each policy, each action should be like judged, whether or not it serves
That's
us or
understandable.
not. Based,
But I
yes,
feel like we should
separately.
talk about the
Like,
good, the bad, and the ugly. Sorry for my interruption,
no,
by the way.
let me actually make my point. Let me finish my
Mhm.
point. Okay, like, if you could, yeah. So I think, for example, we could have a politician A have multiple positions here that is in our interest, and multiple positions over there that is against our interest. I'm not gonna. I think it's a waste of time for me to come and say like, do we like politician A? I mean, I understand on an emotional way. It doesn't work like that. If somebody wants to do something and you want to encourage them, you have to come out and say, "Oh my God, we love you. You're amazing," and we have to say that because that's how you get political capital to be able to encourage them to do something. But that's what you do when you're doing activism. I understand that, but like internally within myself, I don't care if I like the guy or like that. Like, I'm not good. Who cares about whether this guy is a good guy or not, right? And also, a blanket judgment on his entire policies doesn't make any sense. The only thing, for example, I understand is that at this point he might do this, and he might not. And what can we do? We want him to do this, or do we not want him to do this? And so these are basically the metrics. Okay, he might do it and he might not. So it's a variable. Do we want him to do it, or do we not want him to do it? That's question number two. Question number three: do we have an influence as a collective? Question number four: if we do have an influence, how do we actually influence it? Like, what is the things that we could do to influence it? These are the relevant questions. And I think the questions regarding, oh, he's good, he's bad, these are for entertainment purposes. This is treating the news as a source of entertainment. This is my team, that's your team. I hate you because you're on that team, and you're on my team. So you hate him like I do. So you're on my team. So, oh my God, it's like watching sports. So for me, like cheering on a guy or hating on a guy in politics is basically the same thing as watching like soccer or football or basketball for entertainment. You're not really in it to be, to actively do something that changes people's well-being. News is a sort of source of entertainment for you. As an activist, I don't treat news as a source of entertainment. As an activist, I treat news as a source for me to see where we could actually have some influence. So I don't come up with blanket statements over whether or not somebody is good or bad. I look at exactly specific areas and figure out what we could do to actually have some influence. Does that make sense, Michael?
I agree
Okay.
100%, but I feel like we should judge the good, the bad, and the ugly. So that way we don't
Yeah, that's
repeat
the
those
name of a
mistakes
movie.
again.
I'm not saying we don't judge. I'm just saying that I don't come up with a general blank. I think like if I'm judging based on consequences and the influence that we could have, rather than making a moral judgment on individuals. All right, so let's move
Okay, so
on.
Armin, spoken like a true non-American, I would say, first of all. Thank you. Because
Okay.
no, really, and I do hope everyone has taken that to heart, because for most of us, it's very bipartisan here. Every single one of us that is American in this chat needed to hear that, period. So thank you very much. It's very appreciated. Next, we have
I think
Uncle. And
Adam said that he wanted to respond in the chat. Is that okay?
Hey guys, yeah, real quick. I hear what you're saying, Armin, about the consequentialism, and it's a topic that's, I guess, near and dear to me, having mulled this over the years. And they have a lot of hybrid views, and there's this one called rule utilitarianism, and I think it's really relevant here
Yeah.
for the
I'm
religious
a rule. I'm a rule utilitarianist. But
because it's very relevant in this case to like the religious codes of Islam, which there's kind of an adjudication of. And if Islam's going to survive morally, it's going to be like the Protestant Reformation to change the rules that they're following. And so we can say, well, look at the consequences of this rule set and judge a religion by the rule set, which means the judgment can mean like in some future world we can have religions with edited rules. The problem, it seems to be, with Islam is the rule that it's the last book, so they're specifically against updating it. But if you can change the rule that you're not allowed to change the rules, then theoretically there can be religious reform. But ultimately, yeah, you can see the immorality of the rule set and how they're acting. I think it helps to know what various actors, what rules they're following. Just look at them like a robot. This robot's running this program, which is like a religion or an ideology, and this robot's running that program, which is like a religion or ideology. Anyway, that's my take on what you're saying.
Okay, next we have Uncle.
Armin's muted.
You BT, you guys can
Sorry,
hear me?
sorry. No, I just was gonna say, Adam, I get your point, but also regarding reforming Islam, we should talk about that another day because I'm very much against the ability for Islam to reform. But I get what you were saying. But go on, Uncle. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So you guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
All right, I got the timer on going. I just want to commit that I personally believe that copper is going to be a very important factor, and I think it's highly overlooked in this regard. And the reason I'm saying this is because you have the arms industry, you have the electrification of the green energy, and then you have, increasingly importantly, the AI centers, all of which require a tremendous amount of copper where the physical supply is constrained. Now, why does this matter to us? Because Iran actually has one of the largest copper reserves in the world, meaning that this is one of the factors that probably makes interests of the United States gravitate towards Iran. And just to kind of give an example how much it is expected to rise the copper prices, Amazon has recently bought a dead mine because they expect the prices to rise so high that it's worth the risk. So with Iran having one of the largest copper reserves in the Sungun copper mine and several others, because the prices are likely to be increasing, what this means in the short term is that if the Islamic Republic is given a lifeline, this is going to probably have an oversized importance even with discounts compared to oil. Then this, of course, is going to be giving tailwinds to a liberated Iran. And I would say that the geopolitical interests of the United States from a security perspective, especially vis-a-vis China, makes this, as far as I'm concerned, a no-brainer, but I will get back to you guys. We will also see. But note that China is one of the countries that buy the most copper. Like I've looked over the biggest top copper producers in the world, elsewhere in the Western Hemisphere as well. And China tends to be number one buyer there across the board. So for, like mentioned earlier, it's important for the United States to kind of get the Iran and Russia, for example, out of the sanction discount because that will undermine China. Well, the same will go over here. If the United States have more control of the copper, which the Chinese are dependent on, it gives them another avenue for coercion. That's a lot of information, I understand, but I will take this for a broader conversation later. This also pertains to our personal savings because it does pertain to inflation, which has already been hit. But seeing that I've passed 2 minutes and I want to give time for others, I'll quit it here and thank you for the time.
Thank you,
Our
Uncle.
sweet
Thank
Uncle.
you.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, Hassan, you're next. We have 15 minutes until the hard stop. So just a reminder, please keep to your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity. Can you hear me fine? Hello.
Yes.
Hello. The extent to which Islam as a religion is not reformable, a lot of people who are non-adherents of this religion don't fully understand that reforming Islam is not even an option. People who know the religion inside out know this. We try and see Islam from the lens of Christian Reformation, but I don't think that applies to the religion that is Islam.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So Islam. I mean, if Islam can be reformed, it would be reformed for the worse, not for the better. But basically, every time we have Islamic reform, it goes back closer to the original rather than the other way around. And also, I do have to mention that Islam can't be reformed, but Muslims can be reformed. Muslims, not Islam. Muslims can reform by being less influenced by Islam, right? So I don't believe in Islamic reform, but I do believe in Muslim reform because I think there's many Muslims basically live lives that are less influenced by Islam, and I consider that a positive form of reform. The Because Islam is
So,
basically, yeah,
if I
Islam is,
say something here,
yeah,
right.
go on.
Right. So you're talking about non-practicing Muslims, which is very
No,
common in Iran.
no, I'm not talking about just like I don't think it's binary, practicing Muslims or non-practicing Muslims. I think it's like a
Right.
spectrum, right? So I think the more you are influenced by Islam, the more dangerous you are, and the less like if somebody is like 90% influenced by Islam, that are ISIS. If somebody is like, If you go from 90% to like 50%, that's progress. If you go from 50% to 2%, that's also progress. It's not like
One of the things that I noticed on October 7th, to me, it became very clear that if you have more than 20% Islam left in you, you were on the wrong side of October 7th. You were not able to make the moral choice about who was in
I
the wrong.
think this is measurable with numbers, right?
I'm just giving an estimate that, if you have Muslims or Muslims who were praying
So
five
the
times a
way I
day, were
categorize them, so yeah, the way I categorize them is we have nominal Muslims and minimalist Muslims.
right.
Nominalist Muslims are Muslims who are Muslim only by name, but they live identical lives to Muslims. And minimalist Muslims are Muslims that the only thing Islamic about them is that they pray and they fast, and that's about it, right? Like they treat praying and fasting just like, and also they don't eat pork, but they still drink alcohol. So these are Muslims who basically treat like they're praying, like they, brushing your teeth in the morning, but after that they don't really think, like Islam doesn't consume their mind. They don't think about Islam on the daily life. They just do the bare minimum. That's minimalist Muslim. And I think the vast majority, well, I don't know, I think there is a huge percentage of Muslims are nominalist and minimalist Muslims.
And, I would like to hear you talk more about this. This is a very interesting topic. Thank you very much. Thank you
Yeah.
for your time.
One more thing is, in the same way I separate reforming Islam from reforming Muslims, I also think that there's another thing called secularization. Okay.
Of
So
course.
reforming Islam, I'm against, but secularizing Islam, I'm for. Okay. Then the difference
Right.
between reforming and Islam and secularizing Islam is very important. Okay. So
But
reforming Islam, can I, yeah,
sorry.
go on?
Sure. Sorry. I don't know how you introduce secular concepts into Islamic doctrine. I just don't see compatibility. I
Well,
just
you don't even know what I mean by secularizing Islam. I haven't
explain.
explained it to you. You don't, because you say introducing secular concepts into Islam. That's not at all what I mean by secularization of Islam. That's actually
Right.
reforming Islam. So let me actually explain. Reforming Islam is basically keeping the core beliefs and pretending to reform some of the practices or secularizing it. So basically believing in the Quran and Muhammad and Allah is the core, but trying to make it feminist, LGBT friendly, democracy friendly, peace friendly, secularism friendly. That is reform. And the problem with that, this is why I think reforming Islam is actually very dangerous, because the core is the problem. And by changing the covering, you're making the core last longer. And what you're doing is that you're making the core, which is the source of all of these problems, to show its ugly face sometime in the future, even though it's sellable right now because you have made the covering look something more presentable. This is why reforming Islam is extremely dangerous, because the core is still the same. The core is the Quran, and all of that. Secularizing Islam is the opposite of reforming Islam. The secularization of Islam is removing the core, but keeping some of the ceremonies or the rituals, right? So think Christmas trees or Santa Claus, or basically not believing in Islam. You don't believe in the Quran, you don't believe in Muhammad, you don't believe in Allah, but you might have the getting together, some of the symbols, the architecture, the art, the mosque, the community. You might actually get around with, you participate in the community activity. You don't believe in it anymore, but you are keeping the identity card and the membership card, because a lot of people can't leave their religion, not because they believe in the stuff, but because they think if they give up their religion, they're giving up their identity card and their membership card. So by allowing them to keep the identity card and keep the membership card and continue being part of that community and continue doing the rituals, even if they don't believe in it. Imagine, for example, an atheist that still goes to church because that's part of it's the community. It's what we grew up with, right? Or an atheist that puts up a Christmas tree, right? So this is called secularization. So imagine if you could do to Ramadan what capitalism did to Christmas, right? So basically, guys, I know some Christians are here. Don't get offended. Less Jesus and more Santa Claus, right? So if you could do this with Islamic rituals and traditions and ceremonies, by making people who don't actually believe in all that crap to continue to do the rituals, that is the secularization. So you hollow out, you basically take the core and you allow the covering to remain there, which is the opposite of reform, which you allow the core to stay there and remove the covering. That's what I mean by secularization.
Okay, I think moving
So that,
forward, Armin, it would be wonderful if we had a designated time set aside to only talk about this topic, because I imagine it can just
Oh,
continue on and on. However, we only have 6 minutes left, and we were going to
okay.
get to Dajjal as he came in a little late, but has had his hand up for quite some time.
What's up, guys? As far as reforming Islam goes, I don't think there's any future in it. I think when you're talking about Islam, you have to look at it in terms of a business investment. And what is the better business investment? Trying to reform Islam or investing instead into the avalanche of apostasy and making sure that that continues steadily? And I think that's the better business investment to make, basically to invest into trying to get more and more people to apostatize from Islam and leave it all together, much like the Iranians have done. That's what I think. That's what I think you need to do, because if you just try to reform Islam, like all these idiots been doing, like Obama tried to do, like all your lefties tried to do, neocons, it ain't going to work. You're wasting your time, and while you're doing that, more and more of these people are flooding into your countries, raping more of your women, and furthering Islam all the more, and setting up their little caliphate that their pedophile prophet called them to do. So you need to see the whole Reformation thing as a bad investment, something that should be avoided at all costs, and anyone who actually calls for doing that. We need Greenland for strategic purposes. The Chinese want Greenland. If they get their way about it, they're going to put troops over there. The Danish aren't going to stop them from doing it because the Europeans don't stop anything these days. We need to secure that as quickly as possible. I think we're going to buy it. I think that's something that needs to be done. And that's it.
Next, if we have 4 minutes, so Danny, if you can do it in a minute, please.
Yes. So I wanted to address all the anti-ICE sentiments. What are you proposing actually specifically? So in my view, as of 2025, the majority of Americans want all illegal immigrants deported. This is the biggest mandate on which Trump got voted in on. And ICE is going mostly just for the illegal immigrants, which have also violated some other laws on top of that. And we have a state where the population is forcefully opposing the federal government, choosing to enact even a small part of the mandate, and the politicians of the state are actively encouraging this behavior, while the local police refuses to cooperate with the federal police. So given that the federal government is acting well within the will of the people that voted them in just like a year ago, and you don't see Trump voters saying, I voted for him, but I did not expect him to do this, and I was deceived when I voted for him. My opinion is that it's the federal government's duty to fully enforce its power over each of these three parties, the protesters, the politicians, and the police. And that illegal immigrants should be brought before the court and their fate decided there, just like the law says that it should be done.